Welcome to the Southern California PGA Catalyst Series brought to you by PXG. Get ready to transform your game. With PXG, you'll experience exceptional quality and innovative technology that produces real and measurable improvements on and off the golf course. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Blake Jurgis, and thank you for joining the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee with the SCPGA. We are very excited to have Ken Mangles, Scott Edwards, and Dr. Nima Inyati speak about the golf performance zone and how to unlock your athletic potential. Many of you know Ken Mangle from previous educational opportunities, but Ken is the founder of KM Golf Performance, brings over 30 years of physical therapy and sports performance expertise, a TPI Level 3 certified specialist, Golf Digest best fitness trainer for 2025 and 2026. Ken focuses on helping golfers optimize movement and prevent injury. He's been a proud SCPGA partner with since 2015, and he continues to educate and elevate coaching professionals across Southern California. Scott is a physical therapist with over 30 years of experience specializing in rotational athletes. He's a founder of Fit for Golf and is a TPI Level 3 certified in both fitness and medical. Scott blends the cutting edge strength and training with orthopedic care to help golfers rehab and move better and perform at a higher level. And finally, Dr. Nima Inyati is a TPI Medical Level 2 certified physical therapist who helps golfers overcome injury, gain mobility, and improve performance. With a strong background in biomechanics and athletics, his passion is helping golfers stay strong, pain-free, and enjoy the game for years to come. I'm really excited for this opportunity to hear from all three of you and speak about how we can become better athletes and golfers on and off the golf course. As a TPI Level 2 coach, this is some of my favorite conversations, and to become better understanding coach and in the fitness realm. So I am excited to hear you guys present. And Ken, why don't you lead us off and let's enjoy this conversation. And if just FYI for everyone on this Catalyst webinar series, if you guys have any questions or for any of the speakers here, please make sure to either raise your hand or put in the Q&A chat box there, and that is where we'll I'll ask Ken and Scott or Nima to engage them as well, make this an engaging conversation. Just so excited for you guys, and Ken, kick it away. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Blake, and thank you guys for joining us here on the Catalyst. And it's always a pleasure to be with you in some way, shape, or form, whether it's virtually or physically here. So the Golf Performance Zone, unlocking your athletic potential. Our goal here is kind of go over the principles of the Golf Performance Zone. Some of you that, if you played in the Southern Section Championship last year, you noticed that we had the tent set up. We were there pre-round, we were there post-round, and working with Nikki and Ed and everybody there at the SCPGA, kind of that goal being setting up an official zone. So it's your zone to access us, ask questions. It really is the first of its kind wellness zone designed to optimize your physical capabilities, pre-athletic performance, as well as post-athletic performance, recovering for that next day. We have physical therapists, we have a chiropractor. Some of you met Dr. Hannah Savage, who's going to be joining us as well at some of the events. You're working with professionals who, this is what we do. This is our goal. This is our passion. Just as your passion is in the game of golf and teaching the game of golf, our goal and passion is in helping people perform best in the game of golf and the game of life. If you have impairments or past injuries, things like that, come on by. But if you're fit and well, come on by, because I think that there's some things that we can share together with regards to dynamic warm-up, recovery, performance training, whether it's hands-on work or otherwise. We've got that ability to work with you guys, and that's our goal, is really develop those relationships to where we can enhance what you're doing, as well as we can both enhance each other throughout our times together. So that is our Golf Performance Zone. We're going to go into a little bit more detail here by each section, kind of what we do in the Golf Performance Zone, what we do in our own Golf Performance Zones when we're in the studio or clinic, and how we go about things in our thought process that we're hoping to bring to you guys and share with you guys as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Nima Inyati. He's going to take care of going over our assessments. We've got three phases we're going to look at. We're going to look at assessment. We're going to look at dynamic warm-up. We're going to look at recovery, because those are our key components that we're going to work with while we're at that Golf Performance Zone. So Nima, take it away.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. And thank you all for having me. Super excited to kick this thing off. So let's get right into it. As Ken mentioned, the first kind of, let's call it the pillar of what we do is assessment, right? And so we want to get down to the root cause. We want to figure out why things are happening before we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of how we can help. So, we want to assess and not guess, and that's the biggest thing. And Gray Cook, who is the founder of the functional movement systems, which some of you may have heard of, but it's what TPI uses along with the SFMA, which is the selective functional movement assessment. So basically, these two things are the basis and the foundation for medical and functional screening for performance for our golf athletes. So, we like to call our evaluations golf specific. And, what do we mean by golf specific? I think that's a question I get a lot in the clinic at my office. And so there are a few things that we like to look at. First off, it's specific joints, muscles, and kind of the overall movement, how the golfer is moving. What specific areas do we need to look at and touch on, and how can we figure out how those things are working together as a whole unit in a system? Then we can kind of uncover those movement inefficiencies, because we can see, and as you guys as PGA pros, you can see how some of those things can contribute to their swing faults, right? Like if somebody is, not mobile, if they want to turn it to the top of their backswing, well, they might just not have the ability and the capability to do it, or they might lack motor control, or they might lack stability. And those are things that we can kind of dive into and look at. And then we can use TPI to leverage those conversations with you all in the golf industry and others in the golf industry as well. So we can all kind of speak the same language. And then our goal is to reduce that injury risk. And not only do we want to prevent injury, but we want to optimize performance and capitalize on what the player is able to do, or try to pull as much as we can out of them and get the best results. So as we kind of touched on, it's the three things that we kind of really dive into are mobility, stability control, and movement patterns. And I'll touch on all three of those points here in a second. So we can go one over, Ken, if you don't mind. Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. So the framework of what we do is we kind of break down, and it can vary from therapist to trainer to chiropractor. But what I like to really dive into is not only getting through a TPI screen, but then taking them through the SFMA and the FMS, which is what I mentioned earlier. And the SFMA is used for athletes that are in pain. So if we have a golfer that comes in and they have low back pain, for example, this would be the route that we would take, because we can kind of tease out what could potentially be causing that low back pain. But if they're coming in for maybe more of a performance evaluation, or they're looking for something more in depth with trying to get the best out of their game, for example, then we get into the FMS. And that is where, an athlete might have a functional deficit, but no pain. So those are two different starts to the tree, if you will. And then we use video swing analysis. So I like to take videos of my golfers hitting balls into the net at my studio, just to kind of get an idea of how they are moving dynamically. Obviously, if they're a golfer, we want to see what their golf swing looks like, or if their coach has a video, and we can kind of get into a group chat and communicate with the coaches and see what they are noticing and what patterns we can pick up in clinic. And this is kind of my favorite part of the evaluation. I like to get some pressure mapping and some pressure assessment stuff going on. So I have pressure insoles that I put into all my golfers' shoes. And when they hit balls into the net, we can actually get an idea. It's not as in-depth as maybe some of you all heard of, like a swing catalyst, or Smart to Move is another pretty popular one. But these give us enough information to where we can put those insoles in the shoes. We can get an idea of what their pressure is like in the golf swing, what they're doing in the backswing. Are they loading properly? Are they putting pressure in the right spots in their feet? What their pressure trace is like? Are they moving left enough? Are they hanging back on their right side? We can kind of see all that and draw conclusions based on what we find in our offices, where, we do an assessment and find out they lack range of motion, or they might be weak in their hips. And so that can kind of tie into what we're seeing in the golf swing. And I use a device called VALD, and VALD is basically a dynamic kind of virtual range of motion assessment tool and strength testing tool. So we get digital readings on ranges of motion, strength, and we can store that in the system. our clients have access to this so they can look at that on the app as they progress through. They can see what changes they've made, or we can take a look at what they're maybe still lacking in. And that way we know we can touch on those specific points. It's a pretty cool device that gives us an idea and also gives us a baseline and a comparison. So for example, and we'll get into this later, but PGA Tour average for trail hip internal rotation is 31 degrees. Well, if the golfer comes in and they're at 15 degrees, well, we know, gosh, that's an area we got to fix because maybe that's contributing to some of their pain or their lack of ability to be efficient in their golf swing.
Yeah, Nima, if I might, this is one of those areas that I've talked about a lot is how we look at, and it's fascinating to be able to stand side by side and speak with one of the teachers, one of the coaches, the PGA professionals as they're working with our common athlete. Is we're looking at the golf swing from different perspectives in the head. How we look at it is for grabbing these pieces of physical data knowledge that we can then implement to make the physical changes, so that way when they're back with the coach, those swing changes can happen. Right? It's swing change comes as a resultant of those pieces that we're able to look at and work with. So being able to speak a same language from two different perspectives, it really becomes a lot of fun. And I think it's one of those things that if you as a coach haven't talked with and had shared time with on the range with your students, with their therapist, their trainer.
Hey, Ken, use unmute yourself there, Ken.
Sorry. There we go. Was the whole thing muted?
Not the whole thing.
Okay.
Just for a few seconds.
Yeah, but just invite that collaboration, right? And I think that both parties will really kind of see some fascinating, get some fascinating insight with regards to how we communicate and how we can best row the boat in the same direction. So sorry, Nima, keep on rolling, my friend.
Oh, that's okay. Spot on. In fact, a lot of the local pros in San Diego that I work with or that we share mutual clients with, we hit on those same points, and I'll sit in on some of their lessons too. And I'll just kind of get an idea of what they're doing. And then we kind of communicate that way, which is pretty fun. Especially when you're obsessed like we are with the golf swing and golf in general. So getting it to some of the common findings that we see in clinic, and maybe you guys can kind of share some of the swing faults that you all see as well. But just talking about the four kind of major areas that we see the most. So the thoracic spine being one of the major areas, and you likely will see some decreased rotation. Some of your students, you might notice that, oh man, they're stiff. They can't even get a big turn in their backswing, which can cause obviously early extension, a loss of posture, a whole host of issues, reverse spine angle. I mean, the list goes on. But that would be an area that we would definitely want to look at and figure out if it's a mobility deficit or a stability issue, and we address it from that angle. And then we got the lead hip. So we talked about the trail side. Well, the lead side, PGA Tour average is 41 degrees, and there actually is a really, really strong correlation with lead hip internal rotation and the incidence of low back pain. In fact, that I believe is the strongest or one of the strongest correlations. And if you guys find that, that your client is maybe opening their lead side quite a bit as a temporary compensation, that's totally okay. But we need to address that because we want to make sure that they're not overcompensating or they're not adding more stress to other parts of their body and other joints. Because if the lead hip isn't moving, the low back is going to have to make up for it, or the knee will have to make up for it. And you might notice some of your older clients might have had previous meniscus tears on that lead side because they just haven't had the ability to rotate through their hip. And this one is a super common one, whether it's a really fit young college athlete or it's an older lady or gentleman that, they've been playing golf for a while. But core weakness is something we see often. And there are many different ways that we can assess, which we don't have to get into, but happy to answer any questions about that. But really, that can create poor stability, lack of activation, and that leads to, again, a lot of different swing faults, reverse spine angle, standing up out of posture, early extension, stuff like that. And this one might be maybe overlooked the most, in my opinion, which is that trail shoulder. Now, it might be clear to see that they might have limited rotation because they could be in this kind of internally rotated position instead of being able to stay either neutral or maybe slightly laid off. But that limited external rotation can create a lot of those patterns that you might see with over the top moves, steepening of the shaft in the downswing or casting. So those are some common things that we see. So let's connect the dots. And I'm just going to use this trail hip internal rotation as an example. So we talked about normal being 31 degrees. And in a golf swing, we might see somebody sway off the ball, get into reverse spine angle. And that's potentially due to the fact that they can't load into their trail foot properly to stabilize the hip joint. And you'll see in their feet, and this is what I like to look at a lot, which is those ground reaction forces, and you'll see that they'll roll to the outside of their foot instead of maintaining pressure in the midfoot or even the inside of their foot and the ball of their big toe. And if they start to roll to the outside of their foot, then that's when those compensations can pop up. And we might think it's a pressure issue, we might think it's a loading issue, but it could just be the fact that they can't internally rotate. They can't generate that rotation from the hip. So what we do as therapists is we will get into manual therapy, joint mobilization, try to get some range of motion back temporarily so that we can capitalize on that with exercise, give them mobility work, stability work, strengthening work to help reinforce that. And again, as we touched on, we can measure with the pressure insoles and the VALD system to kind of capture that range of motion and reinforce it with what we're going to touch on a little bit later, which is the proper dynamic warm-up training, cool downs, all that good stuff. So what would we like pros to know? I think some main points that we've found so far is that assessment isn't just for injured players. It's for every serious golfer. So as we touched on earlier with the difference between the SFMA and the FMS, if somebody has no pain at all, but you're noticing some of those range of motion deficits, mobility issues, loading problems, weakness, that's stuff that we can also take a look at and work together on to see how we can prevent some of the potential compensations or injuries that might occur in the future. Second point to hit on is that physical limitations can manifest as swing inefficiencies or compensations. So again, we want to get ahead before it's too late. And I believe, and Ken and Scott can maybe attest to this too, but every golfer that we see, and maybe even every golfer that you see, should be getting a physical assessment by a qualified clinician. That way we can establish the appropriate foundation and identify those potential limitations. So final takeaway from me is that the goal isn't just to fix an issue. It's to find the root cause, build a resilient and efficient body that supports the swing. So if we can perform a quality assessment, we can give them the right exercise routine, the right mobility routine, the right manual work plan, and then we get the results that we want from them. So I will pass this along to Ken to let him take it away, or if there are any other things you guys want to mention, go for
I think you're right on. I think that fits right in line with everything we have set up there at the golf performance zone when we're on site. Is the assessments don't have to be as long as what we would do in the clinic, right? If you guys approach us, we know you've got limited time. You've got time to hit some balls, get your time on the range, get your time on the putting green, and get out on the course. We're hoping that everybody has their dynamic warm-up routine. However, I can tell you from as we stood by and as I've stood by for many years, watching a lot of you, your routines could use a little bit of a buff up in many cases. So I don't want to step on what's working, and it's kind of like, we wouldn't fix Jim Furyk's swing or Scotty Scheffler's feet, but I think that there are some things when it comes to keeping you guys well and performing at your best that we're gonna look towards. So, what is a dynamic warm-up? According to the National Strength and Conditioning Association, a dynamic warm-up is based on preparatory motions and activities that are associated. So what do we need for our golf swing? We need rotation at various joints. We need flexion extension or tilt of the pelvis. We need mobility through the shoulder girdle. We need all that. We don't only need the ability to be moved in those ranges, but we need the ability to be strong and controlling our own body. So again, Flexibility is a part of it. Mobility is that flexibility with our strength and control over the top of it. And that's kind of one of the things we focus on. It progresses in intensity. So it starts off as something easy, we ramp it up, and by the end, we're highlighting especially the nervous system. We want, when you hit that first ball on a driving range, we want your nervous system to have just been lit up to where it knows how to interact with the ground, how to interact with it with itself, how my feet interact with my hips, interact with my spine, etc., and how I can be explosive in doing so. If my first explosive move is the swinging of a golf club, or particularly when I ultimately get to driver, long irons and driver, I probably have not done my body the service that it could be done and perform at my best level that way. And again, a dynamic warm-up shouldn't be fatiguing. This is where they're custom, based on your level of fitness, based on what you feel your body does well with. Some players like a dynamic warm-up that actually gets them in a full sweat. Some players want a dynamic warm-up that is just kind of that stair step up to get me swinging the golf club. And we can mix and match and make things happen that works for everybody. What it is not static stretching. So it's not bend over, touch your toes. It is not, let me hold my arm back behind my head and kind of do pitcher stretches and things of that nature. Those all have a time and a place, but that's going to come in our recovery talk. Static stretching is actually a reducer of performance capability, because you can create new motion that you don't have business utilizing because you haven't taught your body how to utilize it. And it's actually a nervous system dampener. So when you're stretching, your goal is to relax muscle tissue. It's to get the nervous system to tone down. When we're warming up, we want to get the system to tone up a little bit and be ready for action. So the science behind it, why does a dynamic warm-up work versus, say, static stretching or things like that not count as a part of a dynamic warm-up? And I think this is important to know. One, it increases blood flow. So anytime you get muscle activation, right? Anytime we're contracting, anytime we're moving dynamically, we are increasing blood flow to those tissues that are most active, as well as the connective tissues. So the big piece of kind of modern and trending forward sport performance, just physical human performance, is less and less about the muscle tissue. And it's becoming more and more about the fascial tissue and the neuro components of how we function, how we move. How can we strengthen those fascial connections? How can we strengthen those bridges? Well, it means moving in different planes. It means moving three-dimensionally, putting tissues under stress. The fascial system of the body is literally from the tip of my little finger to the top of my head to the tip of my little toe, and there's an interconnection between all of it. Whereas the muscular system, when you isolate that out, you would say, well, my bicep functions at my elbow and can function at my shoulder, but it's not necessarily going to connect to the bottom of my foot. Via the fascia and the tissues around it, it does. And that's a part of the dynamic warm-up, is how do we engage as many of those tissues together as possible. We also increase cellular metabolic reactions. So our down to the cellular level, we're waking things up and getting that storming so that that interaction becomes a dynamic part of how the system is working. It improves mobility. Like I said, it's not flexibility, it's about mobility. How much range of motion can you control yourself in and own each degree of that movement in and be powerful in? And if I can improve mobility by doing a dynamic warm-up, if I can get 2 more degrees of thoracic rotation, if I can get from 25 degrees of trail hip internal rotation to 27, 28, 29 degrees, closer to that 30, 31 degrees of quote unquote normal or average, that's going to have the opportunity to enhance my game by enhancing my power, but also by keeping me more physically safe. And we're looking at boosting athletic performance. So athleticism, the skilled expression of strength, speed, power, balance, and endurance. And if my dynamic warm-up can work on waking up muscle tissue, that'll improve strength. Waking up muscle tissue in a way that will be powerful and improve that speed-power combination, including balance, things like that, get that nervous system on high alert, that's our goal. So how does it boost athletic performance? Or kind of another dive into the why it works. It improves oxygen delivery to musculature. And all of these are research validated points of the dynamic warm-up versus people performing without a dynamic warm-up. How does it improve strength and speed power components? Well, a dynamic warm-up increases the speed of the nerve impulses, their transmission, their rate of firing, their speed of delivery, and the coordination of those signals going from nerve to muscle to say, turn on in this manner. All of those are increased and improved when you do a dynamic warm-up versus whether it's static stretching, whether it's just going out cold and hoping that by the second or third hole you're warmed up, or halfway through that bucket you're going to be warmed up. This is a better level of improvement in terms of the neurologic performance. It maximizes force and strength as well as power development, again, via the nervous system. You get that nervous system working at a higher level. It becomes more coordinated, faster, better recruitment of muscle tissue. You're going to get that. Also, with that recruitment of muscle tissue in a coordinated manner, it tensions the fascial system. It either tensions or slacks it in ways that are advantageous. And that is, again, a performance enhancer. And it's been shown to reduce injury risks as well as improve recovery rates. So you're thinking, I'm going to do this 15 to 20 minutes before I hit balls and start my round of golf. So my range session and then my round. So I'm looking at 4.5, 5 hours, maybe plus of that. How does it improve my recovery rate? Well, again, if I'm improving oxygen delivery to my tissues better, there's recovery throughout the course of my play. My internal recovery becomes better. So my latter end of round recovery has a lesser demand. And that's one of those ways. So timing of a dynamic warm-up is really important. Like I said, you want to do this 10, 15 minutes before the actual activity. So I ask my students, how do they, when I'm teaching them their dynamic warm-up, how do they perform when they go to a tournament? Are they putting, chipping first, short game first, and then to the driving range? Or are they driving range first and then putting, chipping, etc.? This needs to be within 10 to 15 minutes of full swing. This is when it's going to be most effective. So the order in which somebody prepares is going to be important. If you go more than 15 to 20 minutes after the dynamic warm-up before physically becoming active, you want to redo the dynamic warm-up, or at least a portion of it, because the effects wane in that in between. That's also why I'll tell people, like, you get into tournament and you may have a backup on some of the par threes or things like that, long par fours. You've got a two group ahead of you type of a weight. Pull out a couple of these, do a couple of repetitions. You don't have to do the full warm-up over again, but you need to reprime the system, get that nervous system ready to go again, so that by the time you're up on the tee box, you're sharp, physically, mentally, and otherwise. So as I've asked you guys many, many times before when we've talked in person, at different meetings, as well as over some of the catalysts that we've done in the past, is I'm calling on you guys as the professionals to help us out and set that example. Do you perform your own specific dynamic warm-up before you exercise, before you practice, or before you play? And if not, why not? And if it's a lack of knowing exactly what to do, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. And that's where we wanted, again, an assessment will guide our way in showing you what is best for what your needs are and how we can set that dynamic warm-up program. And then on the student side of things, do you ensure that your students have performed their dynamic warm-up before each session with you? So ideally, if they've got a 3 o'clock session with you, they're getting there at 2:40, 2:45 because they have a 10 to 15 minute dynamic warm-up to do. And they should be knocking that warm-up out probably pretty near by where your lesson station is going to be at. And they should be demonstrating that. And you want to make sure, hey, if you see them walking up and they've got their bag and they set it down and they're right at lesson time or 5 minutes into lesson time, is give me 5 to 10 minutes of doing your dynamic warm-up before you start grabbing a club, because just grabbing a couple wedges and swinging back and forth is not going to cut it. Should be known as an expectation for all of us. Again, this goes for whether you warm up at the gym before your exercises, you warm up at the range before your practice session and or your lesson, and you warm up before you play in a competitive environment. Let's set the example. So real quickly, dynamic warm-up should encompass all of the demands that are going to be needed by the athlete. And we can do this in a number of ways. We try and keep it condensed to like 5, 6 movements, so it only stays in that 10, 15 minute range. But again, as Nima said earlier, and Scotty will say as we go through, even in recovery, we're addressing stability, we're addressing mobility, which are really kind of paired together very tightly. Balance, creation of ground forces, speed and power, as well as mental focus. If you've got this as a part of your process and you have exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that all build on each other, that's a part of your process that starts that mental game before you even hit a golf ball. The goal is that it becomes a part of everybody's process. Perform it with intention. It's not something, if you see your students kind of going through it and they're just kind of going through movements and they're doing their quote unquote warm up, but there's not an intention to it. It should have the same intention as hitting the golf ball when they're on course or on mat. So Scotty, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about recovery.
Thank you, Ken. So this is sort of the TLC part of the conversation. After having played a round of 18 holes, you can envision the number of swings and practice swings that you've taken. You've created a certain level of stress, whether that's, muscle tightness, whether that's joint stiffness, whether that's lactic acid buildup. We need to address that so that there's not a carryover effect into the day or days after. So the recovery is really a post-exercise recovery. It's crucial for maximizing performance and preventing injury and promoting the overall health and well-being of the athlete. So this is an area where, again, we're going to use our assessment techniques. Once you walk off that 18th green, come over to the tent and ping on one of us so that we can then have a look at how well you're moving now, having played 18 holes of golf. We're going to use that to drive whatever we feel is appropriate for your specific situation to help you move better and recover so that the next day through that dynamic warm-up and continue the process of optimizing your movement and therefore maximizing your performance. There's a whole litany of opportunities or situations that we will utilize. But, why are we doing this? The reason, amongst the biggest reasons we do this, is to help repair and grow the muscles and the connective tissues that have just gone under a tremendous level of repetitious stress and strain. So muscle repair and growth is crucial, but we also need to replenish the energy stores that get utilized as you're exerting yourself. Now, it may seem like golf is not a hugely exertional process, but again, I go back to the idea of number of swings that adds up and can become a cumulative potential issue here. Associated with exertion and exercise, regardless of whether it's swinging a club or lifting a weight, there's potential muscle soreness and inflammation that can go along with the activity. We need to address that. Another big one in the recovery process is trying to prevent injuries. As you go through the process of practicing and or playing, the ability for movement inefficiencies to sneak in there can really open the door for the potential of injury. And so we want to be able to assess that and help you guys and or your students to prevent injuries by virtue of doing a recovery program here. It's also been shown to optimize mental health and psychological well-being. So much like, Ken, I'm asking you guys, are you actively coaching and or promoting recovery for your clients or even for yourself? And if so, if not, why not, as Ken said? Okay, let's talk about some of the strategies. What are the things that we might do with you guys in the recovery or in the Golf Performance Zone tent here? So once, as I said before, among the first things that we're going to do is we're going to look at your posture and we're going to look at how well you're moving now post round. And then things that we can do to try to help promote what's known as a cool down or sometimes a warm down. Those terms are actually interchangeable, but active recovery. So, we may or may not necessarily do an active recovery because sometimes that involves something like, riding a bike or going for a swim or, maybe doing some yoga or something of that nature. A lot of that could be done potentially at a hotel or wherever you're staying, Airbnb, that kind of thing. But we can advise you on those types of things that would be helpful to your recovery process. Mobility work. Mobility work mobility is really the large umbrella of recovery strategies. And underneath that umbrella, we have things such as muscle stretching, okay? At the end of a round, or once you get back to wherever you're staying and having gone through maybe a little bit of an active or manual therapy type of recovery process, getting back to your hotel or your place where you're staying and working on actually stretching, statically stretching the muscles. That helps to alleviate, muscle tension and or joint stiffness. Some other techniques that I like to use with my golfers and my clients is what's known as tissue smashing. The soft tissues in our body are multiple layers, from skin to connective tissue to muscle to connective fascial slings throughout the body that all get engaged throughout the course of swinging and playing. So simply using something like a mobility ball or using a foam roller, there's a whole litany of different implements that we can use, but smashing those tissues and moving them around has a couple of different effects. A, it brings blood flow into the area, which helps with recovery. B, it helps to restore the mobility of the tissues between themselves, so you don't get this cumulative tissue tension that then explodes into an actual movement inefficiency and potential problem. We can also utilize myofascial techniques. Now, whether that is something that we're doing with you using our hands, whether that's something that we're using an implement such as a Voodoo brand, a compression type of approach, or simply using something like a Theragun, or could be using a tool to scrape the soft tissues, possibly even using things like cupping to help separate the tissues and bring in or get rid of maybe inflammatory products and bring in appropriate blood flow components that help the recovery process. Nutrition and hydration. I don't know how familiar you all are with nutrition and hydration principles, but this is a big one here. So optimally, right after a round, and ideally the literature points to, between 30 and 60 minutes post-exercise, post-play, or post-sport, trying to get some protein-rich, snacks or even meals into the system right away so that you're jump-starting the rebuilding process. When you exertionally overstress yourself, there's a degree of micro breakdown, micro protein, muscle protein, injury, that kind of thing. We want to give it the system the tools to start recovering and repairing. Additionally, we need to put in quality carbohydrates so that we're helping to rebuild the energy stores within the muscles. This is going to include things like quality vegetables, fruits, things of that nature. All of this stuff would be in the post-round snack and or post-round or practice meal. So thinking protein emphasis, but with quality carbohydrates here. Hydration, I can't emphasize it enough here. There are a couple of different things we need to talk about. One is the basic parameter for hydration would be to try to consume half of your body weight in ounces per day. However, and this is going to come to play in September with the section championships, when you're performing in a warm environment, some of us are more proficient at sweating and may sweat a little bit more than others. However, in the sports science world, if somebody were to lose 2% of their body weight in fluid, that's appreciable, and we need to be mindful of that. So how do we know what's appropriate? Well, if you were to say weigh yourself either at your hotel or your Airbnb before you went out to the course, or potentially at the course if they have a scale there, weigh yourself before, weigh yourself after, you get an idea of the loss of fluid, and you can present that to us. We can discuss that with you, but if you lose 2% of your body weight, this is something we want to be very careful about. So you might need to consume additional volumes of water in order to replace those fluids. Another trick or another strategy here is to potentially take some solid rock salt and just grind a pinch of it and put it in your water bottle. Doesn't have to be super heavy salt, maybe just enough to sort of sense that there's a degree of saltiness to the water, but this helps you to retain water when you're out there performing in these warm environments. So you're not just gushing sweat and potentially losing, body weight, which can then affect neuromuscular function, can affect brain function and things of this nature. We don't want that. We want you to be sharp on the course so that you can perform at your best here. Also being mindful of alcohol intake right after playing and performing, as it can feed into the inflammation and it can delay recovery and repair. I'm not saying don't do it, but make sure you're getting good water in there first, maybe even some protein and carbohydrates before you think about alcohol and that kind of thing. Sleep. I'm not sure how well you guys sleep before or during tournaments and that sort of thing, but literature supports a 7+ hour per night, optimal sleep period, just so that you're getting complete recovery. This is when we do the vast majority of our physiological recovery. A cooler room actually helps to promote better sleep, and also trying to go to sleep at the same time every night helps with those internal rhythms that help to keep your brain sharp and your body functioning optimally when you go back out for that second, third, or fourth day of playing. Manual techniques. This is another area where Ken and Nima and I will be more than happy to help you guys coming off that 18th green. A lot of players will come to us and say, hey, can you work on my lower back? It's super stiff, it's sore. We might utilize our hands to massage the muscles. Who doesn't love a good massage, right? But we might, mobilize the spine. We might mobilize your hips. We might mobilize your shoulders. Those types of things to try to help alleviate the accumulation of muscle tension, tightness, and or joint stiffness and tightness, so that you can then come back out that next day, work with us again in that dynamic warm up, so that once you get onto that first tee, your body is popping, ready to roll. There's also a benefit in terms of like physical manual treatment, just in the sense of optimizing cognitive tension release and letting your brain kind of be able to focus on the round that you just had. Maybe you do some meta-analysis, thinking about the things that you did well, thinking about the things that you did not so well, and that allows you to make some changes in either your strategy or in how you move in conjunction with Ken and Nima and myself. Heat and cold. This is something that we may or may not necessarily have in the golf performance zone, but can be taken advantage of, post-round, potentially at the hotel or the place where you're staying. But heat and cold essentially improve the overall blood flow to the tissues and joints. That creates, if you combine the two together, they can be used individually, or you can combine the two together. But the outcome really is blood flow. And in so doing, you also are flushing out lactic acid. So you're decreasing the delayed onset of muscle soreness. You're improving the blood flow and oxygen delivery to enhance the repair and the regrowth, and decreasing inflammation and pain. It improves sleep and recovery because you're not sore. You're not rolling over and it's not waking up because you're not feeling quite as sore. And as I mentioned, it's considered effective at easing mental tension. How do we deliver this, or how do we recommend that you take advantage of this? This could be a hot pack that you take with you to your place of stay. This could be a bag of ice. In my gym, we actually have a sauna and we have a cold soak tub. Now, this may not be something that is available to you, but you can recreate this in a shower. So let's say you played around, you came out to us, we did a little bit of recovery stuff with you guys, whether it's manual or movement based. You go back to the hotel, take a shower, do your normal shower for whatever it is. Once you finish, take the temperature from that warm or that hot, that feels so good, and take it down to a cool or cold temperature as tolerated. It does not have to be cold. You shouldn't necessarily feel like you're jumping out of the shower because it's so cold. But that process of going from warm, where you get blood flow and expansion of the blood vessels and whatnot throughout the body that helps to flush all that stuff. Then you go to the cool, side of life, and that kind of helps a contraction. So it is a functional expansion contraction type of strategy that really just leaves you feeling invigorated when you're done. Recommend something like 4 to 5 cycles of warm to cold, and finishing with the cold or cool. It doesn't have to be cold, as I said, but take advantage of the heat and cold when you get back to that hotel. So as been mentioned before here, the Golf Performance Zone is all about you guys and trying to help you guys perform at your optimum best here. We're here to help you guys beforehand. We're here to help you guys afterwards. Please come and find us, after that 18th green. Consult with us beforehand or afterhand in regards to injuries or aches or pains that may have cropped up, before the tournament, or maybe cropped up during the round. Get pre-round treatment from us. We're here to help you guys. This is what we do. We're experts at this. Participate in a golf-specific dynamic warm-up just to get, as Kenny mentioned, just to get your whole neuromuscular system popping at optimal levels so that you can hit that first tee and do your best. And then enjoy a post-round recovery with either or all of us, so that you can then go into that next day feeling like you're ready to rock. Also, hey, talk golf with us because we love it too. Thank you guys for letting me be a part of this, and take it away.
Yeah, I think that again, we're looking to build team and network, and we're looking from our end. How can we, with the Golf Performance Zone, how can we enhance your experience? How can we be a part of enhancing the time and the effort and the practice and the hours that you've put into your own performance? Can we help to shine some light on another way to take it to the next level? Because everybody wants to hit more good golf shots, right? Better quality, better quantity of good quality shots is what we're all after, and that's what we're here to do on our end. And we would love to have as much interaction with you guys as possible. And again, questions that you guys might have when we're there. We're going to have at least 3 of us on site all 3 days at the section championship, and we're working on trying to get as many days covered at some of the other upcoming championships and tournaments as well, with the goal being the broader the network of high quality people, like with Nima, with Scotty, myself, with Dr. Savage, getting other people in other areas. If you've got people that you work with that you like as a therapist, as a high quality trainer, as a chiropractor, out in the desert area, down in San Diego area, up in wherever you're at, feed them our direction. Send them to me, send them to Ed, and we'll make sure that, again, kind of that they're at a standard that we're trying to set with you guys, because you guys set the standard as the instructors in the golf game. We want to set the standard as the fitness and wellness professionals for the golf game. And if we can marry those 2 pieces together and get a broad network, that's what we're all about. So thank you guys for having us. All of our contact information is on this last slide. So if you've got questions, I'm kind of in the metro area, as everybody knows. Scotty's up in the Ventura area, and then Nima is down San Diego direction. So if you've got questions specific to those areas, feel free to reach out to any of us.
Yeah, Ken, thanks so much. And I actually have a couple questions just my way as well. And great presentation from the 3 of you, and just understanding the teamwork is so necessary to develop just great golfers. And I think some of the people on this call are some teachers. I'd say a lot of them are the head professionals or general managers or directors of golf or assistant professionals that may not be able to play golf as much, but they have students or they have members that do. And I think that as a teacher myself, I'm not an expert in necessarily the fitness world, but I need to surround myself with experts, because I know that there's importance in my own game. I just got my kneecap actually around when I was like 16 years old, and just get it again in 24. And sure enough, that actually has affected my golf swing with not getting proper PT afterwards, and didn't realize that until recently. And now I've got a kind of a plan together to do that. And I think a lot of our members at our facilities have had those past injuries. And I think a lot of it, I think the assessment part of it's huge, with kind of going in blind. If you're just kind of a person that is helping a member out or a student out. If you're just kind of just guessing and just knowing that they do have an injury, but you don't know what it necessarily is or what it does. I think that's where the assessment comes into play. And again, just I encourage a lot of the people on this call just to build that teamwork into with the group here as far as the golf performance zone. My question, I guess, for maybe for Ken or for the group, it's like, one, how many people are part of the organization? Is it kind of a consulting side of things with kind of partnering up with the PGA professional? Like how can the people on this call kind of understand golf performance zone and kind of how we can utilize the team of professionals from the whether it's in the PT world or the fitness world or wherever it may be.
Right. Yeah, I think well, right now our team has recently expanded in terms of the number of partners, and that's kind of where we're trying to build is working with Ed and with Nikki and everybody to kind of build how many good quality partners can we get in that are in this arena, so that the network again grows. At the tournament itself, there's going to be 4 of us in total at the Southern Section Championship. So Dr. Savage will be there along with Scott Neiman and myself. And we're going to be there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Wednesday, just for the morning session. We won't have a recovery time on Wednesday necessarily, but Monday, Tuesday, we'll be there full days, and Wednesday morning. You can, if you kind of know when you're, as the tee times come out, you know when it's at. Again, reach out to us. All of our contact information is up there, and you can email us or contact us DM through Instagram and let us know, hey, I'd love to see you. I've got a tee time at 9 o'clock. Can I see it like 7:30? Because we're going to be there as soon as the driving range opens, and we won't be going back out and taking things down until the last group is coming off of 18 on those first 2 days. So we can set up times ahead of time. Basically, it's just a walk up for the most part. People just they'll walk up. A lot of people they'll come up and just say hello, and we welcome that too. We just want to create relationships is step number one. And once that relationship is created, and we find that once somebody comes in and says, hey, you know what, I have this old injury and I've got this kind of nagging thing that's going on. What can we do about that? Once we've worked with somebody once, they typically are back Tuesday, they're back on Wednesday, they're back the next year, they're back the next year. So I've got a lot of folks that that first year that I ever did this was very much people walking up and introducing, but a little skeptical about, well, I don't know what I want you to do to my body right before I go out and play. And then once somebody got on the table, it's like, walking by a restaurant that was empty, but now you walk by a restaurant and there's 2 people in there. So I'm going to give it a try. And once you give it a try, I think you'll find that the service we provide is pretty tasty.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And then I know a question came in earlier, and I think it's a good way to kind of to showcase what you guys do. But because I think, like I said, a lot of people are in the office and they maybe they go out and play golf in a tournament, or maybe it's just a round of golf with their members or whatever it may be. They're in the pro shop, they're in the office, they're sitting down, and then they go from the office and straight to the first tee. Any certain maybe dynamic stretches or something that you can, or some advice to offer for the PGA professional on this call to, like, if I'm sitting down right now in the office, is there things I can do to help me stay engaged and get ready for the first tee? Or do I need to kind of be standing up, or maybe I'm standing up behind the desk? Kind of give us some examples of how we can be practical with our warm-ups. Cause I think a lot of times it's hard for us to do that, to allow that 15-20 minutes of time when sometimes you don't have that time.
Right. Sometimes you're almost on call and you got called. Now it's time to respond. Right. Okay. Scotty, Neiman, do you want to take this one? You want me to run it?
Go with it, Kenny.
So, Neiman, do you?
I was just going to touch on that point. I get that question a lot, actually, with a lot of the clients I work with, and one of the things I find that is super helpful is try to keep stuff on you. I usually recommend a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, and just have it at the shop, because you'll be surprised, like Scotty was touching on earlier, you'd be surprised at what you could do with just a tennis ball. I mean, you can get it up against the wall, get it right in the lower back, get the muscle tissues loosened up. You can do kind of standing stretches, and we're happy to send examples of this stuff too down the line. And you can just reach out to us for those examples. But give yourself, I know you got to run out to the first tee, but give yourself maybe a minute or two and utilize some of these tools, and you can just kind of get the hips moving. And then when you're waiting on the first tee, there are actually a couple things you can do, especially if you're riding, you can use the cart. I've actually recorded some videos myself where I use the cart and I do some stretches on the cart. And then that way you can get the hips warmed up, get the body warmed up while you're, maybe waiting for another member that you're playing with to tee off, or another, playing partner to tee off. You can kind of hang back a little bit and do a couple of those stretches. But Ken, if you want to take the rest of it.
Yeah, and I think like in the office at the desk, I think one of the big keys, and it's a key for everybody, changing postures regularly, right? You set a timer to where you've got 30 minutes, and at 30 minutes, you're going to stand up. And whether you have a standing desk or not, you're going to stand up for a minute or two. Maybe you're going to do a couple pelvic tilts, right? You're going to kind of get into posture, and you're going to work the pelvis. You're going to do a little stretch and rotation, some active mobility work. And then you're going to sit back down. You're going to work for another 30 minutes, and you're going to do what you're going to do. And if you're dosing yourself through the course of the day, that's where I like mini bands and things like that. Is I can keep a mini band at my desk, and I can work some shoulder rotation work. I can do some stretches and activation through the shoulder. If I did that 5 minutes before I had to run out, and I knew that was coming, and I was dynamic through the course of the day up to that point, I'm going to be a lot better off because I've kind of kept my nervous system on awake versus sitting back and relying on the chair and gravity to just put me into the seat.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's it's great stuff. And I think it's just the professional, sometimes it's hard to kind of just to do that, right? But I think it's just the encouragement, knowing that it's going to benefit you and your body, and it's going to help you perform. Especially a lot of times is like those first like 3 or 4 holes can be kind of rough, and then we're warmed up. It's like we want to be warmed with that very first hole rather than kind of waiting to the back 9 to kind of start going. And I think encouraging our members to know how important it is to do all the things that we're talking about, whether it's the beginning aspect of it with the warm up, to the practice, to the first tee box, mentally, physically, all those things are all a component to playing the best golf possible.
Right.
So love
Yeah,
that
like
stuff.
what Nima was saying with using the tennis balls and the lacrosse ball or things, and even bouncing it. Bounce a tennis ball, throw it up and catch it, throw it against the wall and catch it a couple times. Engage that nervous system, engage your reflexes, make things happen a little quick. Use the mini bands, use things like that. In 5 minutes, you can be not as warmed up as would be ideal, but a whole lot better than going out and waiting until the 4th hole, like you said, to feel like you're moving like yourself. And again, your risk for injury is going to drop significantly with anything you do dynamically ahead of time.
Yeah, this is great stuff. So I kind of want to end things right here. I want to say thank you to Ken and to Scott and to Dr. Nima. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys, if you see them, their email and their Instagram, and just get in contact with them as far as if you are needing support within your membership or even with yourself. Just please make sure to contact these guys. Are experts in the field, which is a value for us. And I think it's very important for us to recognize that we may not be all things, but we may know we can lean on other people to support the things that we do and the things that we care about, which is, one, growing the game, getting players better at their golf, or even just yourself becoming a better athlete. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us for this hour of the SCPGA webinar Catalyst series. Super fun stuff, good conversation, and excited for the section championship. And everyone here, just say hi to them, and they're there. Utilize them and play some good golf moving forward. Get those bodies moving.
Absolutely.
Last words.
Thank you for having us.
Perfect. Thank you guys, and have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you soon. See you next week. See you in a couple weeks.
Good. Bye, guys.
Thanks so much. See ya.